Hey everyone, in this video I'm going to cover handling subscription payments with Stripe in a FastAPI web app. To use the code in this video you'll need to set up an account with Stripe. I'll leave a link in the description if you don't already have one. So before we can get started with the code, we need to set up a few things on Stripe first. This is the dashboard you'll see when first logging into Stripe. For the purposes of this video, we're going to create two subscription tiers, a basic and premium subscription that users can sign up to. So we need to go down to products, and I'm going to add the two products. The first one will be the basic subscription, and we'll give it a pricing of $5 a month. We can save that and copy the price ID shown, as you'll need that later. And then we can create a second product. This one will be our premium subscription, and we'll set the price at £15 a month. Again, copy the price ID to use later. We'll need those price IDs for setting up our user subscriptions later. We're also going to need to grab the public and secret keys for Stripe, which we can find under the developers option by clicking on API keys. You're going to want to take a copy of the secret key to use in your app. I've already got mine set up as an environment variable to use in the app, and take a copy of the public key as this will be needed on your web page later. Now we're set up with Stripe, we can make a start with the code. I've got a new FastAPI app here set up with Jinja templates. I won't cover setting that up here, but you can check out my other video on setting up Jinja templates if you're interested. So the first thing to do is to install the Stripe package. So I'm going to go and edit the index.html template in the templates folder to start integrating with Stripe. First thing we need to do is to bring in the Stripe script, so we can add the script tag in the head. And in the body I'm going to add two buttons, one for the premium subscription and one for the basic subscription. As you can see, those buttons won't actually do anything right now. I'm going to handle that in a separate script. So I'll add another script tag in the head, but this time telling Jinja to bring in one of my own scripts instead. This will look inside the static folder for a file called script.js. So let's go and start implementing that script. The first thing we want to do in here is to set up the event handlers for our buttons. I'm going to create two new variables to hold our price IDs, and then copy in the values we took earlier. And then I'm going to set up event listeners for the button, but these are going to be done in the event callback themselves. We want to listen for the content loaded event, otherwise you may get a null result when looking for the buttons. This adds two functions to be called when either button has been clicked. Now, to have these buttons start the process with Stripe, we first need to create a checkout session for Stripe to use. We'll make a call to our own API to create the session and then hand over to Stripe to handle the checkout. First, we need to add another variable as we need an instance of Stripe to use. The variable we're passing in here is the public key we copied from the dashboard earlier. Then we can add a new function to call our API. This function accepts a price ID as a parameter, which the buttons will pass in. Then it makes a post request to a create checkout session endpoint on our API. We'll add that soon. And then it returns the JSON object from that call. Now back in our button event handlers, we can make use of that function. First for the premium subscription button, and then for the basic subscription. So here we call the function we just added, passing in the appropriate price ID. In the callback from that, we call redirect to checkout on Stripe, passing in a session ID that will be returned from our API. That's it for the script for now, so let's go back to our API. As we mentioned, the script is going to call a create checkout session endpoint, so let's add that to our API. First, we need to update our imports to bring in Stripe and OS for the environment variables. And we need to set our API key for Stripe. Then we can add our endpoint. This endpoint will call the Stripe API to create a new session and requires several parameters to do so. We pass in a success URL. This is where Stripe will redirect to once the user has successfully completed the subscription. And we pass in a cancel URL. Stripe will redirect here if the customer backs out of the subscription. We set the payment methods accepted. I'm just accepting card payments. And I've set the mode to subscription as I'm setting up a recurring subscription. The last parameter is line items, which is a list of items the customer is purchasing. They're only purchasing one here, and we're passing our price ID, which identifies the subscription, and a quantity of 1. The quantity is needed unless you're doing metered billing. And then returning the session ID Stripe returns to use on our front end. We've added 2 callback URLs in this call, success and cancel, which don't currently exist, so we'll add those too. These are simple endpoints that will return rendered templates, so the next bit is to add those to our templates folder. We're going to keep these pages simple, so first for the cancel page, we're just setting a heading so we know which page we're on and providing a link to go back to the home page. And for the success page, essentially the same, but indicating that payment was successful. Now we should be able to run our app and successfully create a subscription. So on the home page, we can see our 2 buttons, and if I click through to create a premium subscription, we can see that I get redirected to Stripe. First, we can show the cancellation working. If you click the company name with the back arrow, you can see that we get redirected to the cancel page. Now if I go back through again, we can use test data to create a subscription. Stripe provides test data to use to mimic different situations. I'll leave a link to that in the description. For this case, I'm using the data for a successful subscription. Then when I submit, we can see that I'm redirected to the success page. Now I'll do the same for the basic subscription. And again, we have another success. You can see and manage these subscriptions on the Stripe dashboard. So if I open that up and go to payments, we can see both of the payments have gone through and are marked as succeeded. However, if we go down and view customers, we can see a potential problem. We can see that we have 2 separate customers, despite it being the same session. When you don't pass an existing customer ID to Stripe, it will create a new one for the transaction. So we can make a change to our app to reuse a customer. Now I'm going to do this in a very bad way, so consider this fair warning. Because I haven't set up auth or a database, and it's out of the scope of this video, I'm just going to create a single customer to be reused while ever the app is running. This is a bad idea and you shouldn't do that. Instead, store the customer against the user in your database or something. That said, let's add a static customer to our app. And then before we create a checkout session, we can create a new customer in Stripe and set the customer ID to be reused. And then we update the session create call to use that ID. Now the first time we create a subscription, it will create a new customer, and the second time it will reuse that customer instead of creating a new one. Again, don't store the customer in app state, it just saves me implementing a database and auth for this video. The next piece to add to this is to provide customers with a way of managing their own subscriptions and providing a way to cancel them. This can be done by using Stripe's billing portal. First, we need to configure our billing portal using the Stripe dashboard. We go to Settings, then under Billing, select Customer Portal. In here, I'm going to toggle on allowing customers to cancel subscriptions. And you must also provide a terms of service and privacy policy link. I'm just going to provide some links that don't exist yet. And save that. Now we can go back to our code and add an endpoint to create a billing portal session. Here we're creating a billing portal session using the customer ID we just created and setting a return URL as our site's homepage, and all we return is the URL returned by Stripe. We're going to add a link to this on the homepage, but it's based on the existence of the customer ID, so we'll update the index page endpoint. Here I've added a second value called hasCustomer, which is just a Boolean indicator of whether or not we've created a customer at this point. Now we can update our front end, so let's start with the HTML page. Here we render a button based on the new passed in Boolean, so it's rendered appropriately. And now we need to update our script to handle that button. As before, we're adding an event listener to the button and calling our endpoint in there. Once we get the URL that Stripe returns, we just redirect the user over to there, which will open the billing portal for the user. If we check the app again, we can create a new subscription. We haven't created one since adding the customer. And now when we go back to the home page, we can see the button for Manage Billing. And if we click that, we can see our current plans and have the option to cancel them. And that's it. You've now got subscriptions set up with Stripe, can create customers and have them manage their own billing. I hope this was helpful. Thanks for watching.